Hello, and welcome to Couched in Color with Doctor Alfiee. I'm your host, Dr. Alfiee. This is the show where we focus on all things mental health for young people of color and marginalized populations, including teens, young adults, their families, and communities. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to stick with our theme of special topics, and we're going to have the opportunity to be blessed by the knowledge of this wonderful young woman named Kimberly Berry. Kimberly teaches parents how to advocate for their young people. She herself advocates for young people, and all of her work is focused on how do we ensure that young people with mental health challenges obtain the very best care and that is consistent, culturally relevant, and focused exactly on what the young person needs. So obviously, she's a perfect choice for the show. We met a couple months ago when I was a guest on her podcast. The name of her podcast is called Being UnNormal. And it streams on all platforms. And so today we're going to have an opportunity to chat about her podcast, to chat about her advocacy work, and to chat about her business, where she teaches other folks how to advocate for their young people. So stay with us. I know you'll learn a lot, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. I want to welcome my wonderful guest. This beautiful face that you see goes with a beautiful, brilliant mind. Her name is Kimberly Berry, and Kimberly has her own podcast called Being UnNormal. And I had the honor of being a guest on Kimberly on your podcast last year. And you found me. I was so grateful. Like your sign says, I was so grateful that you found me. And I'm really excited to have you on. And what I shared a little bit in the intro was that I feel like you are a person who can really educate us and teach people about what it means to advocate for a young person you love, who may have some mental health challenges. And so whatever, it's free ranging. We don't have a set script or anything to talk about specifically other than a couple topics: mental health, diverse young people, marginalized populations, and those of us who love them. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief introduction and just tell us whatever you would like us to know about you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, Dr. Alfiee, I'm a huge fan of you and your work, and it's such an honor and a privilege to be here with you again. And of course, anytime that I get to steal moments with you, it's perfectly acceptable to me. Yay. So I'm excited to be here. My name is Kimberly Berry, and I founded Being UnNormal a few years back. And really, that was born out of my own lifetime experience with my own struggles with mental health, but then especially the impetus being a parent of children with mental health diagnoses and the challenges that come along with that in a very broken behavioral health system.
Yes.
So that, going through that and not really finding a lot of resources that were well vetted, informational, inspirational during when I was in that isolation with my daughters when they were in crisis, that really gave me pause. And I went, well, one of these days I'll be the change I want to see in the world. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to do that. I started the podcast and I started coaching, and now we're rolling into our third year, and it's just a blessing. I get to work with amazing people. I get to move the needle, and that's really what Being UnNormal is about, because we do have this idea of normalcy. And when you're in crisis with your children, you keep waiting to go back to normal, back to the way things were before that crisis happened, which I think is a very natural human reaction. I did it. But what you soon find out is that your normal is altered and forever changing. And I think, especially now during this time, it's never been kind of more in alignment with what I know to be my reality, as everybody's normal is changing. Mm-hmm. It is embracing the unnormal, embracing the uncertainty, and coming to a level of surrender and acceptance to what we can and cannot change. And that's what I really love working with parents on, because it's tough. You don't know what you don't know. And especially when you start talking about marginalized communities, children of color, as we know, the prison population has a disproportionate amount of brown and black people in there. And that is very true also for the juvenile justice system. And unfortunately for mental health, our first line of defense is law enforcement. Mm-hmm. When a child goes into crisis, we're coached to call law enforcement. And if a child is in a psychotic state, mm-hmm. and they're not safe and they strike an officer, mm-hmm. well, guess what? Now you're in the juvenile justice system, which does not provide the services that those children desperately need. And a lot of parents just don't understand that. You're going to trust what people are telling you, but you also don't know the long-term ramifications of what that can possibly look like. And there's been so much damage to so many families, and especially families of color, because of the system that's set up. And so not only have I experienced that personally through my interactions with mental health providers, but also out in the community and working with parents and hearing what they're being told as well. We need better alternatives to serve our children, because we know the earliest point of intervention in any mental illness is critical, and yet we delay these diagnoses for such a long time, and what we're doing is delaying treatment, especially when their brains are developing. And so I'm just very passionate about helping families really navigate this, so the best end result happens. Because when your child is ill, it's not just your child that's ill. There's going to be a ripple effect through the family. How could it not? And so that's me in a nutshell. Podcast coach, extraordinaire, advocate, and speaker, because I really want to make a change in our systems and our thought processes and stigma.
Yes.
So we can change this.
Oh, that is so, it's just so moving to hear your story and hear you talk about what your passion is about. And I can just watch you and see the energy that you have around this work. And I know, we're smiling now, and we're in a space where we can talk about this in a relaxed atmosphere. And it makes me wonder a lot of things. But one of the things that makes me wonder about is, what is it like for parents, right? You do a lot of advocacy training, and you do a lot of advocacy on your own. What is it like for parents when they first come to you, when they first encounter you, when they are just getting to that place? And I know that that's probably not the whole population that you work with, but sometimes I imagine you encounter parents when they're at that space like, oh, Lord, they told me if I don't go get Jesse some help, they can't come back to school. Or they put Jesse out, for 6 weeks. And they're like, you better go get him some care, because we're going to want a report before we let him back in. Like, I do that kind of work all the time, where I'm having to help kids re-enter school because they've been put on a medical withdrawal, or they've been just put out altogether because of the behavioral problems. So I'm just curious, what is it like for you when you first encounter some of these parents, and their first experience in coming to you is because they feel like they're at their wit's end, or they don't really know what to do, where to go, who to turn to? Can you talk a little bit about, just in general, what do you do? How do you engage them? How do you keep them engaged? What kind of conversations do you all have?
Well, I think that's a great point, because not only have I been there personally, my child was trying to be displaced from the district, and I had to advocate for her. I had to advocate for my youngest daughter to get her the medication she desperately needed, to get the treatment she desperately needed. When parents come to me, it's usually two things that I see: desperation and complete despair. I am desperate for change. I am desperate for answers. And I feel like nothing has worked, and I'm ready to give up on myself and my child. And that's what I hear a lot is, I can't do this anymore. And it's that heartbreak that we don't talk about, the grieving process that comes along with being a parent that of a child with emotional special needs. And one of the interesting things that I see right now in this time, as we're filming through this pandemic, is that there's a lot of parents now going through a mourning phase because their senior isn't graduating high school, or their kids didn't get to go to prom, or they're not able to go get their driver's license at 16 or whatnot. But the irony of the situation is, any parent who has a child with emotional special needs has already addressed these grieving processes, because these are everyday realities for us. My kid isn't going to prom. My kid still doesn't have a license. I know children that couldn't attend their high school graduations because of their social anxiety, right? And these parents have to mourn these preconceived notions that we have of what parenting is, because we are spoon-fed what these ideals are, these milestones, what it's going to look like, what to expect when you're expecting, and all this stuff. Yes. But what we don't talk about is, not everybody fits in that box. That's and right. So there is these parents that feel this deep grief, despair. They have no idea what to do. They feel unheard. Yes. They feel often really invalidated by the professionals that they've tried to seek help from.
Yes.
And so they feel so silenced. And that's a huge theme too. And I particularly, I have kind of this just rule of 1%. If we can make 1% shift into moving forward, whatever that looks like for the individual family, then that's a huge win. We have to celebrate the little wins. And that's what I really kind of start to focus on with parents, is also getting them tapped into proper resources. Because depending on the social economic level, we have to be able to look at safety and stability and security. And for a lot of families, and families that I work with that are low or no income, they're really at that basic level where they need help keeping a roof over the head and food in the mouth. And we can't expect children to psychologically stabilize when their environment is not conducive to allow them to do that. And their parents are not in a mental space to be able to help them through this. There's so much pressure on parents for that.
Yeah. So would you say, because I agree with you 100%, especially when you talk about parents from marginalized communities, not all, but often these issues around mental health, mental illness, getting care and that kind of thing, we don't necessarily begin to address those until it is time for desperation and despair. So I'm wondering about what kinds of success stories have you seen, or in your work as an advocate or a trainer, when you're educating people all over the country about caring for their children's mental health? And then I'm going to go back to this thing about mourning that you said, because that's just so, I don't want to forget that because it's so important. But what are the sort of the flip side? Do you encounter parents who, as soon as they see something might be a little questionable, they're already in a space where they're starting to try to act? And what would you say are some of the characteristics of those parents, you know what I mean, that make them, I don't know, like speculate, what makes them able to see these things early on and then take action, as opposed to wait until it's crisis time and then, like you said, coming to you in desperation and despair? What distinguishes those families?
Education.
Oh.
Absolutely, education. When you have access to information and you can self-educate, your knowledge and scope of awareness is way more expanded than somebody who has never had exposure to that information. So that really is a critical piece. If you can, do the proper vetting and research and be able to obtain that information. That's why that's a part of my mission. It's to expose, empower, and educate. That education piece is critical. We have to get good knowledge out to people. Another thing, and I will say that even the byproduct of that as well, attunement. Or awareness. Be able to be attuned to your children and really understand their own operating system. To have that level of awareness of their behaviors allows you to better speculate or know or be tapped into the subtle changes that can happen over time. So those, I think, are the two things that I think when people are able to be more proactive to solve the mental health issues, they have higher levels of just education, and not just, I'm not talking degrees, but they've done the research and they have that level of attunement and awareness with their children, because then they can spot when behaviors are off quicker than anybody that wants to sweep it under the rug of teenage angst, right?
Oh, girl. So you speak my language, because I have a really close girlfriend. She did the actual first episode of my podcast. And that's something that she's a retired school counselor. And she says the same thing that you did. People will look at some of these young people's behavior. And she said the wording is a little different, but y'all are saying the same thing. Like you said, typical teenage angst. She says typical teenage behavior, right? So if the kid is moody, if they're going up in their room all the time, they don't want to be around anybody. For some of our kids, they're still high achieving, right? They're still making good grades. They're still in all the activities, but they're feeling like crap, right? So I started watching this. I'm not going to say I'm in love with it, but I saw a good example of that. This show that everybody's raving about, Little Fires Everywhere.
Yes, I'm waiting for all of those episodes to drop so I can just binge it.
Binge it at one time? Yeah, so I won't say what my opinion is about it, but there's a young African-American girl in it, and to me, she sort of epitomizes what a lot of our young people go through. So I don't want to give too much away, but this is not giving anything away. There's a part of it where you watch her sort of struggle to find her place. And in trying to find her place, you can see that there are all these things negatively impacting her. And to me, I would say some of the stuff is traumatizing. And so just watching her, she's an amazing actress, whoever this young woman is. She's supposed to be like a 15-year-old. But watching her try to create balance between all this stuff that's coming at her and then trying to find her place and then trying to do well in school, like it kind of breaks my heart for some of these young people. And so when I think about things like typical teenage behavior and typical teenage angst, I am 100% with you that if we as parents, guardians, loved ones taking care of these kids are not attuned to use your word, what's going on with these kids from day to day, right? We have to be having conversations with our children. We have to be in a place where we're, not stalking them, but your eyes are on them. I tell parents all the time, you need to know what social media your child is on. I'm not saying you got to stalk it, but you at least need to know what apps are on their phone. You at least need to have a sense, right? I say this to parents and they laugh at me. What are these kids' screen names? Now, yeah, once they tell you, they're going to go get a fake one. But the point is you at least need to be enough on their radar that they have to think twice before they just hop on. You know what I mean? Like, she might be stalking me. She might see this or he might see this. And so I just am so grateful to you for mentioning this idea of communicating with your child, paying attention to your child, and educating yourself. And so that makes me think a little bit about the current, wildness that we're in today, and with the coronavirus crisis and the mourning piece. Right. And so I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit more, because I think it's important for it to be named. Yeah. How can parents support their young people and take care of themselves while going through this normal mourning process of the things that they've lost? You know what I mean? Because of the coronavirus. Just talk a little bit about that.
Well, absolutely. And I want to just tap back really quick to what you just said about the education and achievement piece. One thing I really want parents to understand, achievement is not correlated to mental health. So please understand that your children can still be educationally achieving those benchmarks, but still struggling with mental health. And in fact, people with high anxiety will actually become overachievers and perfectionists just from the nature of their anxiety for trying to get a sense of control, or especially eating disorders.
Yes.
They will flip that into achieving really good grades and doing all the things that they think are going to make them feel better. That can actually be an indicator. So parents, please just understand that achievement does not have, and I want educators to hear that as well, because a lot of in IEPs and 504 meetings, I hear educators going, where the grades are fine. Yeah, but this kid is in psychiatric crisis and just tried to kill themselves.
That's right.
Please hear that there is a social emotional domain in the IEP and 504 for a reason.
That's right.
So I want to say that. And then secondly, the teenage angst things and the social media, we do have to be tapped into that as parents. We should have login information. We should understand screens. They have multiple accounts. Understand what's happening in their DMs. What you see is not reflective of what's actually happening. And you have the absolute right to shut down inappropriate social media activity.
Yes.
You are their parent, and they do not have the brain development this point, to make those real sound decisions. They have impulsivity issues. They're teens. So I just want to say, parents, it's okay not to be your kid's friend. It's okay to say no.
Yes.
That's your job, to provide that structure and boundaries and walk through why you're shutting it down. So when I had to shut down some social media accounts for my youngest. I said, this is why, this is what you did, this is the repercussions, this can how it can be perceived, this is how it can make people feel.
Yes.
And and because of the, your impulsivity here, I have to say, look, right now, this was not a good decision. So to help you make better decisions, it's going to take time. So let's shut this down until it's appropriate for you to use that account. Age is not also correlated. Biological age is not correlated to brain development age. So we need to understand that, especially with children with ADHD.
Yes.
Yes. So if your children have, if your child has a mood disorder or an ADHD diagnosis that has high impulsivity rates, you have to understand that you're going to have to shelter down and be the bad guy in a sense for a little bit longer when we're trying to actually do the right thing by protecting them.
Yes.
In appropriate ways.
Yes.
They should be allowed to make mistakes because we do learn from our mistakes.
Yes.
But we also don't want to put them in situations that can have massive repercussions down the line. And that's parental discernment. So I just want to kind of say that.
But before you go on to the next part, I want to hear you say one more time, it is okay for you as the parent to, can you just say that? Repeat, it's okay for you to be the bad guy. Can you just say it? Because I need parents to hear that, and you don't have to be your child's friend.
Parents, it is not your job to be their friend.
Girl, yes.
It's your job to protect, love your children, and help them, guide them to make good decisions.
Yes.
It is okay to say no. It's actually your job to say no.
Yes, yes. Thank you. That is so important, because I think so often, I see this in clinical practice a lot. Parents will come in and they have no idea what's going on with the child, right? So when they walk out of the room, the kid is telling me all this stuff that they're dealing with. They're being bullied, or they just broke up with somebody, or there's some intimate partner violence going on with the little, boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever. And the parents have no idea. That's number one. And, then the other thing is, I've had parents sit in clinic and berate children. Well, I'll say begin to berate, because as soon as I hear it, we have to shut that down. It's like, not Dr. Alfee's office, but I don't play that, right? And so I don't let the kids disrespect the parents, and I don't let parents disrespect children. And I think this idea that you've communicated of, it is your job to get the child on the right path. If you see them veering off the right path, it is your job to bring them back and put them back on the path. And I really love, I love that you said, the process that you go through, right? It's not just I'm going to take it and shut it down. I'm going to explain to you what you did wrong. I'm going to explain to you the repercussions, or the potential repercussions of what you did wrong. I'm going to give you a consequence, right? And I'm going to make sure that we get you back on the right path before I give you anything back. Because you're setting the kid up for success.
Yes,
right?
You're modeling boundaries to them. You're modeling decision making for them. You're showing them how to think through a process to understand, behavior and consequences,
Yes.
right? Which translate into the real world when they're at work and they're having conversations with their boss, their coworkers, their peers. This is where now, being the parent, that we are setting that foundation up so they can be successful later in life. One of the things that you just said that really struck home is it's this. I think parents nowadays, especially, they have this idea that I do all the stuff for my kids, and that's me knowing my children. Well, I take them to dance practice. I drive them to volleyball. I get them violin lessons. We make dinner together once a week, so I know my kids.
Right.
And what I think is happening right now, especially in the virus, is that parents are really figuring out that they actually don't know their children.
Not a clue. That's
and
right.
And it's hitting them hard.
That's right.
Right. So the activities that quantity time is not quality time.
Ooh,
right. And that is not us being, when we're just hanging out watching TV, we're not engaged with our children. Yes, we're physically present, but there's nothing happening during those moments that's going to bond you. There's nothing happening in those moments that will give you greater insight to your child. And it's a work in process. The very first thing that I do when parents come to work with me is I actually have them take an attachment quiz.
Ooh.
I want to know their attachment style.
Yes.
Because our attachment style is super important and plays out in how we communicate and give consequences to our children. And if you're having a child with behavioral health escalations, how you manage that escalation, your attachment style is in full force. And I know it was within me. And so when things are calm, having those conversations right now, we can be having, and I know this was true for me, more family meetings. And the family meeting was just, how am I feeling right now? What do I need from each person in my household? And what do I think that, I'm not getting, right? So now I know your perception of what you think you're not getting, because I may think I'm giving it to you. I need to hear from the horse's mouth. And then what we need from each other. I need more validation from you. I need more love from you. I need more kindness from you. So these are things that we can be doing to, again, strengthen our relationships, our family units, right? this grieving process from the virus, I think part of parents grieving right now is letting go of these traditional thought processes of what parenting was going to be in terms of losing those milestone capabilities.
Yes.
And then the flip side, what I just mentioned, is them coming to terms and understanding that they may not have the perceived relationships that they did with their children, and that really affects pride and ego and shame. And if I feel shame, guess what? That shame is going to encroach my parenting style. That shame is going to eat away at me. And then also, because we're all stuck indoors together, and even if we have really strong relationships with our children, being stuck in the house with your kids all the time is enough to drive anybody just a little bit on edge, right? You're just, why do you chew so loud? Have you always done that behavior? Like, you're being annoyed with people, right? You're like, oh my gosh. So then we may lash out or act out in ways that are not typical of our current or past behaviors, right? All of a sudden, parents are going, I never yelled at my kids, and now I'm yelling at my children. Or I used to have a lot of patience, and now I'm tapped out. And so there's this now dynamic of these parents that, had certain behaviors before, and they're acting in ways that is new because of stress, because of all the stress, but it's not congruent with their values. So then they start to feel this internal conflict of, I'm acting in a way that I never have before, and it's not in alignment with who I think I am. And that's going to cause strife and conflict. And if I'm somebody who's really attached to my pride and ego, that means that I have to fight to make myself right and justify my behavior, instead of looking at it and saying, this is how I'm responding. Why?
Yes.
And peeling that layer back. So when working with parents, now, I mean, like a couple of months ago, I have a boot camp series, and I run them through certain, specific things, right? Understanding your attachment style, understanding the escalation process, understanding anger triggers, looking at antidotes, understanding your relationship with your parents, and how that has an effect, because we model, we do what we've been modeled, right? So, as parenting styles have changed over, especially the past couple of decades, I call them legacy parenting styles. What we learned from our parents that grew up in the 50s and 60s, it was such a different time versus now with the millennials and this younger generation that are a little bit more tapped into emotional awareness. But here we are, like somebody like me who's I'm Gen X. I'm kind of in the middle of this world, right? And so there's some legacy parenting styles or things that I'm going to try to, use with my children that may not be effective. And then when it's not effective, who am I going to beat I'm going to beat myself up, which is going to make me feel worse. And so understanding that legacy dynamic is really important for parents too, because if they're grieving certain things in their relationship with their children right now, it may be because they're trying things that just are no longer applicable for the times that we live in. And so there's an adaptation that has to happen. And again, a letting go and surrendering. I surrender this way that doesn't work, right? Accepting the things we cannot change. And then having the courage to change the things we can, which is that self-awareness, self-inquiry as parents. It begins with us. Children do what works for them. Their behavior is communication. And they're going to do it. And so if it's been maladaptive and it's been successful, guess what? They're going to do it. Because they're going to do what works. So it starts with the parents to modify our approaches to really start to gain awareness, understanding, doing the self-awareness, self-inquiry piece, and understanding how our relationships with others, our attachment style, all these things, communication style, all come to play with our children, who are the biggest mirror and reflection of our greatest strengths and greatest wounds.
A whole word, girl. You just gave us like a whole word. And I am always, people who know me personally know I don't give compliments easy. I'm a nice person, but I don't give empty platitudes. So I have to tell you that you are just brilliant, my sister. Like you have there's so much knowledge and so much awareness, so much self-awareness. And I really do feel like it's important to share your message, because what you're talking about is lived experience. What you're talking about is watch vicariously through other people. What you're talking about is you've educated people personally. People come to you because they want to get this knowledge, and you can share it with them from a space of, because I really know, because I lived it, right? I'm not telling you anything that I don't do myself. And that authenticity to me is really important. And I also have to compliment you on the awareness around how these things may look different across different populations, because that's so key. And sometimes I'll include myself, and I have a tendency to think that our way of looking at the world is everybody's experience of the world. And Lord knows it is not. And so anytime I have an opportunity to engage and encounter people who understand I have a way of looking at the world, I am also cognizant that my experience is not a universal experience. And so how do I make adjustments to engage people who are different from me, right? Whose experiences may be slightly different. So I just want to thank you so much for being a guest and for sharing all this wisdom. Girl, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna watch this a couple times. I'm be like, now she said I need to do, I'm be taking notes, right? And it's just fantastic. And so I'm gonna tell you, the one thing more than anything I'm gonna remember forever is quantity time is not quality time. That is awesome. So thank you so much, Kimberly. And before we end, will you tell people, just give us a little reminder, right? Be as detailed as you would like about where people can find you. And then for those parents who are probably going to want to reach out to you, for the offerings, like you mentioned, a boot camp and the advocacy work and training, can you tell us where we can find you, and then what kinds of things, if a parent needs support and wants to get support, what can they expect to get from you?
Absolutely. Well, I have a website, of course. That's the easiest way to find out more about me, which is www.beingunnormal.com. That's UN normal, unnormal.
Okay.
And you can always, if you're ready to work with me, you can apply to work with me there. I do a boot camp series, which is 6 weeks for parents, where I work with them through a specific curriculum. But I also am offering one-on-one coaching right now because of the time people are really struggling.
Yes.
So I want to be there to help them. I have the podcast on my website, but also it's available on all podcast players. You can listen to Doctor Alfie's episode, which is Hot Fire. And so, there's that resource as well. And, I just did a 3-part workshop series I'm going to be putting up online. I'm on Facebook under Being Unnormal. And I am launching a Facebook group called Unnormal Nation, because we're going to unite and get a little unnormal together. And then I'm also on Instagram under Being Unnormal Podcast. So I'm on social media daily, trying to get as much great information as I can out there to be of service and help. Like I said, it's my mission.
Awesome. Well, Miss Kimberly Berry, my sister, thank you so much for your time and attention, and thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to be like finding you and reaching out to you. I certainly know of some patients who really could benefit from what you're offering. And I'm certainly going to make sure I share, the word about what you're doing and where people can find you everywhere that I can. So in the midst of this crisis, this stay in place, like you said, right before we started filming, I am grateful that we both have somewhere safe to be, right? That we're able to be with our families. I'm grateful for that. And even within that, I still want to wish you, like I always do everybody, lots of love, lots of light. And because I have talked to you now twice, I know that your stuff is always informed by good, culturally relevant science. So you are a rock star, and I really appreciate you. And I want you and your family to take care.
You too.
So there you have it. A wonderful conversation with a super knowledgeable, bright, beautiful. I meant to tell her I loved her haircut. It is really cute and very flattering. Kimberly Berry of Being Unnormal. She has a podcast, a website. She's getting ready to do a lot of additional things to bring you lots of information about the kind of advocacy and training that she does to help parents who have young people and children in their lives whom they care for and love, and who also may have mental health concerns that they're trying to deal with. So as always, I just want to thank you for participating. Thank you for joining us. And I'm looking forward to bringing you the next episode. So before I sign off, I want to say to you, please always remember that you can find us on our Instagram page, Couched in Color. You can find us on Twitter at Couched in Color. You can find us obviously on our YouTube channel. Please do search us out on YouTube, and please do subscribe so you can always get the notifications for when we're going to come out next. And then finally, find us wherever you get your podcast fix, because it's portable. You can listen to it while you're sitting in the house under stay-at-home orders. You can listen to it while you're washing the dishes, or you teenagers can listen to it in between doing all the other things that you like to do. But you can find us now on Apple Podcasts. I'm really excited to say Libsyn, Radio Public, lots of other places, SoundCloud, Spotify. So please do search us out under Couched in Color, and I'll look forward to having you join us the next time. In closing, I want to wish you, as always, lots of love, lots of light, and I always, as it was today, hope that it is informed by good, culturally relevant science. Take care.